Hey everyone, we have about 5 minutes, okay? Hey everyone, just about 1 more minute, just try to wrap up the discussion and we'll come back into plenary. Okay, everyone. Unfortunately, as much as I'm sure that I know you're all having incredible discussions, but the fact is we are unfortunately running out of time. So, if you'd like to stay where you are, it's completely fine because there's microphones everywhere. But otherwise, if you want to come back to the front and just take, and if you really could just take about 2 minutes to just give it. I know it's been a lot of time to speak. So if you could just take about maybe. If the facilitators or if the people that were taking notes could just give about a 2-minute overview of what you discussed, that way we can move forward. So, do we have any volunteers of who would like to speak first? Who would like to speak first on behalf of their group, I mean? Don't everybody volunteer at once. Yeah.
We'll go first.
And when you're giving an overview of what you all talked about, please give it just a brief methodology of how you frame the discussion, just so we know. Yeah, I'm pretty serious. We like. Does anybody want to go first? Because we have about 10 minutes. Okay, Jen, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. Actually, I was voluntold by one of the group members. My name is Jennifer, and I was facilitating the second group, which is tailoring to target groups. Quick note about our methodology. We actually had a smaller group, so we kind of tried to sort the comments or the responses into categories. We came up with 6 categories, and I'll just read them really briefly for you. First is relevance. The second one is local content. Third one is regional and global collaboration. Fourth one is capacity building. The fifth one is diversity, and the sixth one, which is the last one, is new channels and ways. We then kind of just sorted out the different comments, and we came practical examples, so less abstraction and use things that are more relevant in the targeted person or targeted audience's daily life. Fourth one is language. So local content really means local language to really speak to you. And the last one I really wanted to highlight is multilingualism and diversity. To have people create content, I think it just did talk about this one. So maybe I'll just stop here and let the other groups summarize.
Thank you so much, Jen. And just in case anybody else wants to come in at the end of it, please do. But thank you very much. Dan, do you mind? Can I also volunteer you as well?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I was facilitating the group that was talking about analogies and simple ways to explain internet governance. And the methodology that we used is we used the comments from the survey as kind of a starting point. So we read some of them, but then we just kind of engaged in a discussion of the challenges that we face in our different jobs and the different types of communities that we're trying to communicate with. And it was actually really helpful for me. And I just want to list, since we were a group about analogies, I want to list some of the analogies that came up in our group. One was the internet is like water. So if you get poison in the water, things go bad. Another one was kind of an urban planning analogy of if the street's broken, you call the mayor. So if the internet's broken, who do you call? So it's kind of thinking about, the city is this like data flow. Well, specifically to blockchain, there was like the analogy of like using it as accounting, although we weren't really convinced that that was like an effective one, but that came up. Architecture, this is similar to the urban planning one. We talked about the internet as a structure and the architecture and building and the fact that this architecture is still being built. And that was one of the analogies that we could use describing the way that internet governance is evolving. And then the other analogy was similar in terms of governance, was kind of thinking about global warming as another big topic that has global implications but local ramifications as a way that we could talk about internet governance. Some of the other things that we talked about is one, that there's this tension between breaking it down into really small bits of, like for example, trying to explain net neutrality with analogy versus recognizing that the internet is interconnected and that if you make one change one place, it's going to affect other things as well. So we also, other times you need to really maintain a holistic perspective. A key was always making sure it's relatable to the people you're talking about, and oftentimes that is done through talking about examples from people that they know or people that they can imagine, and also connecting it to basic human rights or other values that they share. We actually talked about a lot, but I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you very much. Can we go ahead and go to this? You want to do it? No, Dennis, can we go straight to you? Yeah.
So I was facilitating group 3 on how to engage with schools and academia. And we basically covered a lot of things. And luckily, all the comments were pointing towards the same issue, which is whether there should be internet governance courses in the structure or in the curriculum of primary, high schools, and universities. And unsurprisingly, there was a kind of a consensus that internet governance should be part of the curriculum of all of these courses. But then we ran into or covered different issues that might arise when we think of that idea. And starting with schools, the first thing that we kind of talked about was whether it should be mandatory or should be an optional course, and if it should be part of primary school or only high school, how specific that should be, and then all the challenges of when we think of internet governance, a course on internet governance, what are we talking about, whether this course should be integrated into other subjects or whether it should be a separate course, what are the implications of having that decision into the curriculum of a kid or a person who can already make decisions when they're in high school. Another issue that came up was when we were talking about a course on internet governance, and we were talking about that as something that we should be implemented globally. What are the issues when there's a country where there's not a lot of access to the internet, and whether there shouldn't be a priority instead of just teaching people about the internet. But then one thing that came up is that when you teach these courses, you make people more aware of the importance of the internet, and that can foster more campaigns about having more access. Another issue that came up was how to train the trainers. So depending on the context, how you can build capacity for people who are going to teach these courses. And then when we moved on to talk about universities, issues that came up was how to reach out to university professors, how to convince them that internet governance is important, and if it's important, in which courses it should be taught, if it's a more general and broad subject that every person in the university should be aware of, or whether it's more specific to some disciplines and courses. And we also talked about the role of governments in creating side programs, not only in the curriculum of schools, but also like online courses and so on, and also the importance of bringing other stakeholders into these efforts, such as, like, for instance, the online courses of the Internet Society and these other stakeholders that can contribute to these debates. So that's the wrap-up.
Thank you. Thank you guys very much. And lastly, Yelena, can you take it?
Denise actually gave us the great intro, because the things we've been talking about are actually starting with the online courses that are already existing over the internet. So We pointed out to few recommendations that practically the community should start from the basics and from the online courses that are already available, such as ISOC Learn course, I Can Learn courses, and other available resources online. We all know that there is so plenty of them. Maybe we should think about the directions of how to recommend for their better promotion so they're more visible to the interested communities. There is also conclusion that simply there are different types of newcomers and different types of communities that need different types of mentorship. Not all of the newcomers need the same approach. Not all of the newcomers have the same needs, and the communities they're wanting to participate are different by their purpose, by their work, and by their size. So we should have that in mind. And there is no one magic solution for all of it. What came as a conclusion that basic one-to-one communication and the work where more experienced members of the communities are communicating with the ones who are just entering is the key that creates friendship, that creates personal connection between of them, that creates that very learning concept and learning connection between people. From that point, mentorship programs should be tailored to meet the needs of the regions and the local needs also, and they should face from starting from one-to-one communication to practically motivating people who are being mentored to talk with their friends, talk with their little groups in their communities and in their local regions. So that would be like few points about the mentorship. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena, and really thank all of you so much for being a part of this and for taking this time. I mean, I really can't stress enough about how you know, this is this whole thing is volunteer work. I mean, we're doing this, you know, on our own time, and because we care about this topic, and we really appreciate how much you're willing to help us with this and help us to help advance this as well. Hopefully, maybe by the time, you know, more work is done in this particular field, we won't just have to tell our parents or our friends or whatever that, yeah, we just do that thing on the internet, don't worry about it, just be happy about it. And don't worry, I can pay rent. But basically, aside from that, I think the sign-up sheet, if you'd like to know the responses and all that sort of thing, if you'd like to get our final report, it's over there. I really cannot thank Jen and Dan and Dennis and obviously Jelena enough. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of the session. I thank you so much to my co-coordinators, my co-organizers, Agustina, who unfortunately couldn't make it, and of course, Jelena. Thank you to Mark, who's our rapporteur, to Marco, who's helping with the technical stuff, to Krishna, who agreed to be remote participant, or moderator. Also, I always like to thank the person that's transcripting, because that's gonna be really helpful to us later. Thank you very much, person that's transcripting. Could you just write your name? Thank you so much, Monica. You see, it's a real person. So with that said, thank you all so much, everyone. Thank you, Monica. And I really, you know, we'll be in touch with you, and hopefully we'll be doing more work in the future on this. Thank you again so much.
It was automated, right? Yeah. It's not. It's kind of surprising. Eu achei que seria automatizado.
Can I write you my email so you could send me the notes as well?
Yes, I thought that you had done it.
Jennifer, Dennis, and Dan, can you guys just come up here whenever you guys are done with everything?
I write very bad. I'm afraid you can read it afterwards. Would you like to write that?
And if anybody, like Bia,
yes.
like you took notes, right?
C-Y.
Yeah, can you send those?
Y
R-I-L
R-I-L
dot M-I-T-R
G-R.
O-V.
Like that?
Yeah, at gmail.com.